Nick, it's our first episode of 2023. Welcome back.
And Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year to you. I feel like a lot of the issues facing the Liberal government that we talked about the last time, namely federal provincial relations, healthcare, have only become more urgent. And I know you've got the latest federal ballot tracking numbers, so why don't we dive right in?
Yikes, Michael. Check out the ballot numbers. Conservatives, 36%. Liberals, 28. New Democrats,
Wow.
21. Bloc 7, Green 6. People's Party at around 2. And,
Hmm.
the key takeaway here is the Conservatives have opened up a lead outside of the margin of error at the beginning of 2023. This is a bad way. This is the worst way for the Liberals to start off their year because they're basically back on their heels. And it looks like a significant number of Canadians are looking at the Conservatives. Interesting thing for them, People's Party is down, so that's probably good for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. But for the Liberals to have the NDP at 21, they're up 3 points compared to the last election. The Liberals are down 4 points compared to the last election. And I think what the Liberals have to worry about is a 1-2 punch, basically getting squeezed by the Conservatives on the one side, the New Democrats on the other, and vote splits that will be working against the Liberals. The good news for them, how about this for a piece of good news? The election is not today. So if you're part of the red team looking at this, it'd be like, I don't see an election now or in the foreseeable future, because these are very grim numbers for the Trudeau Liberals.
7 point lead for the Conservatives. So conventional wisdom, I suppose, is governments tend to defeat themselves. What's driving this? What does the Liberals need to do to turn this around?
Well, I think they need to do a reset. Obviously, right now, at least with the parliamentary coalition that they have with the New Democrats, they've got till 2025. So I think they've got to try to ride out this short term, but they have to put something in the window, something new. Renew their vision for the country, why they need another mandate as opposed to cruising along. It also means that the upcoming budget this spring will actually be a critical opportunity for the Liberals to try to do some sort of reset. These trend lines, so this is today's trend. What the Liberals have to fight is that this does not consolidate, that this does not continue. So they have to try to disrupt the Conservatives and this new trend that's emerging where the Conservatives have the upper hand. So I would expect that the Liberals are probably going to come out swinging in 2020 through 2023 because they've got to change the trend line, because if this consolidates, it'll just make for a very ugly 2023 for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Now, as you mentioned, Nick, the NDP have a deal with the Liberals to help them govern until 2025, but we're seeing a lot of news about failing to get a healthcare deal with the provinces. And I noticed this week that NDP leader Jagmeet Singh tweeted that the Liberals were essentially, responsible for letting the Conservatives attack healthcare. What do they need to do about this?
Well, for the Liberals, there needs to be some sort of action. So first of all, look at the issue tracking numbers. Healthcare is the top unprompted national issue of concern, around 17%, followed by inflation at 13%, jobs in the economy at 12%, environment at 12%. So healthcare has been nudging out all the other issues in the last while. And this speaks to why this is on the agenda. The other thing that's important is that healthcare traditionally is good for the New Democrats. After all, remember Tommy Douglas, right? And who brought us public health care. It's usually good for the New Democrats and also generally good for the Liberals. It's usually just not good for the Conservative Party of Canada. So the Liberals have an issue that they usually do well on. The New Democrats have a big interest in protecting public health care. So expect Singh to put the political vice grips on the Liberals to protect and enhance public health care and access to public health care. This could be the new. So I think that the initial battle lines might actually be potentially between the New Democrats and the Liberals on this issue, as the New Democrats want to make sure that they protect their brand and advance and protect public health care. So it'll be a bit of a tricky issue, I think, for the Liberals. It'll be interesting to see what they have to do. But you know what? the narrative that the Liberals had on healthcare in 2022, which is let's talk about funding, and it wasn't a very great conversation with the provincial governments. I think the Liberals have to do well on healthcare if they want to reverse the trend, the ballot trend that's currently favoring the Conservatives.
In Ontario, we saw some headlines this week too. Premier Doug Ford said that he would start using private clinics to help ease up a major surgeries backlog. Now, there's no question that that's a major issue that needs to be fixed, but using private clinics has met with some controversy, and it can't be good for the NDP to see that action taken.
Yeah, and we have to remember, Jagmeet Singh originally is from the Ontario Liberal Party as a provincial MPP. So he's very well versed on the Ontario provincial situation and what's going on. He's the leader of the federal New Democrats. It's not surprising that he's come out swinging against the Ford provincial government, the progressive conservative government in Ontario. And, the other interesting thing is for the Ford government, it looks like this is going to be their intervention. They're going to be focusing on not necessarily protecting public health care. They're going to be focusing on, from their perspective, access and cutting wait lines for a number of different types of health procedures. And they're using this little message about using your OHIP card and not your credit card. That's very clever messaging, because it probably makes a number of Ontarians feel that perhaps the public system will not be under threat. But on the other side of the equation, if you happen to be Jagmeet Singh, you know that this is a big risk to public health care as soon as any provincial government starts introducing more of a private element.
Nik, so according to your federal ballot tracking numbers, the Conservatives have a 7-point lead, but what does that mean for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in terms of his personal preferred Prime Minister numbers?
Well, if you're Pierre Poilievre, you got to be happy to be at 36%. Let's face it, Stephen Harper won an election at 36%. So 36 is one of those magic numbers that Conservatives mathematically or statistically, the probability of them being able to form some sort of government, probably a minority government, starts to come into play. So he's got to be happy on that front. But, check out the numbers on who Canadians would prefer as Prime Minister. The survey is accurate, plus or minus 3 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. So we have a statistical tie for all intents and purposes between Trudeau and Poilievre, 30-28, Jagmeet Singh at 16. So the other thing is Pierre Poilievre numerically is 2 points back of Trudeau, but the ballot numbers, the Conservative Party is about 7 points or thereabouts ahead of the Liberal Party. So this Conservative pickup is a result of disaffection with the Liberals, where people are drifting away from the Liberals and going to other options, such as the Conservatives and also such as the New Democrats. So it's a mixed bag for Pierre Poilievre. What this also means is that if he can better define his image in a way that appeals to just a few more Canadians, realistically, another 1 in 5 or 5% more Canadians, that would probably help consolidate the Conservative advantage. So maybe the other element that we want to add to what we should expect from the Liberals is not only for them to attack the Conservatives, but for them to really try to undermine the Pierre Poilievre brand. Maybe Pierre Poilievre is going to be on the receiving end. Him and his brand will be the main focus of a lot of the political dialogue in 2023 as he tries to build up his brand and the Liberals try to tear him down.
Nik, it seems like Poilievre has walked a fine line so far as Conservative leader in terms of the Freedom Convoy. He was an early supporter of the movement, but then he's also said that he doesn't necessarily agree with everything said by the movement. He was met with controversy by speaking at the Frontier Center for Public Policy, and they ran into criticism a few years ago for downplaying the effects of residential schools on Indigenous children. I mean, it's sort of, if he's trying to appeal to more conservative voters and more potential voters, I'm not sure what his strategy should be here.
Well, I think what we're seeing, what the strategy is, I'll call it not to get too technical, but ... So when it comes to the Freedom Convoy, yes, he is on the public record saying he understands the anxiety, the anger, the frustration of Canadians that joined the Freedom Convoy. But what he has added is a little bit of a proviso in the same way that he did at the tail end of 2022, that, you know, having the F Trudeau flag was a little too far. So support, but, and, you know, the other interesting thing is that for those Canadians that align with those types of views, they're probably thinking, well, he must say these things if he wants to win an election. We know in his heart of hearts that he's with us 100%. So what this allows him to do, and I think this is a good strategy for Pierre Poilievre, it allows him to still send signals to those Canadians that he understands their frustration and that he agrees with them, but allows him to put a little bit of different distance that perhaps in some things they've gone a little too far. And I think he's used the same type of thing in terms of the academic from U of T, Jordan Peterson. You know, that there are a number of things that he agrees with Jordan Peterson, but some things that he doesn't agree. So I think we're going to see the Pierre Poilievre but strategy. And the reality is this is his best alternative, because he can't turn himself inside out, because then he'll be criticized for being inconsistent and flip-flopping. And he can't get too close to some of these elements because it undermines his ability to build his brand into a broader coalition that can unseat the federal Liberal Party.
Nik, just to go back to the healthcare issue, Poilievre was speaking about that lately and raised some big attack points. Let's listen to that.
But I do find it incredible that Justin Trudeau's managed to double our national debt without any improvement to our healthcare system. It's really astonishing. He's had more debt than all other prime ministers combined without any improvement in healthcare. In fact, healthcare after 7 years of Trudeau is worse than ever. So I can understand why all the premiers are frustrated with the damage he's caused.
So, you know, a pretty acute attack on Trudeau over healthcare, and I feel like that is sort of more of a typical mainstream conservative response.
Absolutely. It's where's the beef is what he's basically saying. The Liberals have spent all this money, the deficit is up, the debt has grown, and healthcare, it's not getting any better. So this is probably a better attack for Pierre Poilievre, as opposed to engaging on some of the other issues, because it gets into the privatization debate, which can be risky for the Conservatives. But for him to attack the Liberals, to say you're spending all this money, but we don't see any material improvement in healthcare, is the right tack for the Conservatives, because it has to do with the management and spending of tax dollars and the impact, or from his perspective, or the Poilievre perspective, the lack of impact that spending all this money has had on this issue that is critical to Canadians.
Nick, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about what the world thinks of Canada. Nick, let's board the old trendline time machine and go back to 2015, where Justin Trudeau first got the Liberal government elected and promised to restore Canada's reputation upon the world stage. Now it's 2023, and where do things stand?
Not so great. Actually, when we look at the trend line, and we ask Canadians every year whether they think Canada's reputation has improved, somewhat not improved, or not improved at all, check out the trend line. So in 2015, looks like Canadians, with the election of the Trudeau government, said, hey, looks like things might get a little better for Canada. You know, in the Harper era, those numbers weren't that great. But when you look at the trend line, you see a slow and steady decline of optimism when it comes to the views of Canadians and how they think our international reputation is panning out. So not so great. You know, the other interesting thing, if you're the Prime Minister, foreign affairs is usually a big advantage. Like, they go on these trips to look very statesman-like, and it's usually good domestic politics. But, you know, right now, what's clear is that when we look at the international stage, not a big political draw for Justin Trudeau or the Liberals at this point in time.
Well, there might be some good news on the horizon. U.S. President Joe Biden is finally going to visit Canada. We've talked about that in previous episodes. It's been a long delay for him. So can the Liberals use this as an opportunity here?
I think they could use it as an opportunity to put something in the window. And the fact of the matter is, it's usually good for prime ministers when the president of the United States of the day, I want to say, except for Trump, usually when the president of the U.S. visits Canada, it's good for the prime minister because it puts a highlight and a spotlight on the binational relationship with the United States. Canadians know that this is our most important international relationship, both diplomatically and from an economic perspective. And it could probably help the Liberals do a little bit of a reset so that people can start focusing on what's happening in the Canada-US relationship. That said, what also needs to happen, in addition to the, I don't know what we want to call it, the backslapping? I don't know. So the handshaking, and the all the niceties. What would help the Liberals is if they could actually announce that something was accomplished in the meeting. Because it's not enough just to say, oh, we're friends, we like each other, we have a great relationship. What the Liberals have to do ideally is put something in the window in terms of something specific being accomplished in the binational relationship as a result of the discussions between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Canada.
Nik, it's interesting. Things were not great, let's say, during the Trump years. There seemed to be personal animosity between Trump and Trudeau. It might be fair to say we had to renegotiate NAFTA, but during the Biden era, the Buy American policies of Biden hasn't been great for Canada, especially in the automotive sector.
Yeah, it's not much better. The interesting thing is that much of the Trump agenda has not been outright repudiated by the Biden administration. Like, for example, on the tax cuts that Trump introduced, Biden has not really reversed any of those things. But the reality is that whenever the U.S. is more focused on its domestic political agenda, that's just not good for the world, and it's not good for Canada. And many times when these policies are introduced, Canada becomes a victim from the perspective of a policy on the border with Mexico has implications for Canadians crossing the border, and the Americans say stuff like, that was not targeted at you, that's because of our southern border. But the reality is that there needs to be one common border policy for the United States, and in many instances the border between Canada and the United States is fundamentally different in terms of the scope, composition, and the things that happen compared to the border between the United States and Mexico. So it hasn't been great, but this is an opportunity for Justin Trudeau to try to re-engage the President of the United States, remind the President of the importance of the binational economic relationship, and hopefully renew things in order to move the binational relationship forward.
Nik, I think we'll leave it there. As always, thanks very much.
Thank you.